It is another week. Real quick, if you're not, we do also, so in addition to this Facebook group, we do have the podcast and YouTube channel. So make sure you're following us there at the Bookkeeper Blueprint. You can find us underneath both of those. So right now it's most of the places you can find podcasts and on YouTube, and then it will be on more places as the year
What
goes
is the
on.
name?
So,
What is the name of the podcast and YouTube channel?
The Bookkeeper Blueprint.
Bookkeeper Reprint?
Blueprint, yep.
Blueprint, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we're there. All of those places.
Okay.
So we're trying to get 2 videos up a week on YouTube. That is sometimes not always happening, but as much as we can get up there for you guys.
A lot.
Happening. So Megan and I also own our own bookkeeping businesses in addition to doing these things. And so we are right there in the weeds with you. For sure. Okay, Megan, so I know right now we're getting asked a lot. One of the interesting questions I saw, let me know what you think of this, was hiring. So we had someone who recently, she's done a really good job of hiring to try to get some work off of her plate, but she ran into kind of part of it's reality of, well, now you're the one putting out the fires, right? So if you're doing the client communication and you have contractors under you doing the work, if they miss something or something's going on, like you're still communicating with the client. So now you're not just doing the transactions and client communication, you're primarily doing the client communication and then handling that workload, right? Do you want to talk about that, or did you freeze? Oh no.
Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you.
Can you hear me, Sherry? Okay.
Yeah, I think you're dealing
I
with
lost you
weather
for a
issues,
second.
right?
Okay. Yeah, I am. I'm gonna turn my video off and see if that helps. I don't know if it will.
There you go. Oh, weather. Oh, winter.
Okay. Yeah. Oh. Okay. So you said hiring, and I missed pieces of that, of course.
Oh no, you're good. So I had this thought. Oh, thanks for grabbing the link. And the YouTube channel is under the same name, the Bookkeeper Blueprint. So if you search at the Bookkeeper Blueprint, will come up for sure. But on the topic of hiring, we were recently talking to someone who's trying to scale their bookkeeping business, and she's gotten to the point where she's hired about 3 people under her, and she's at the point where she just feels like she's putting out all the fires.
Because that's all she's doing is putting out fires.
Yeah. So I had some thoughts on that. I don't know if you want to run with that, or if there was something else that was pressing.
Yeah, no, that's perfect.
So one thing, and I was kind of talking to my main contractor about this week, because she's also a mom. And I think sometimes when we go to hire, we started our business so we could have, and I've done this, so I analyzed my own self, where we started the business. We want to get some help because remember, we probably started it so that we weren't working 40 hours a week, or we had flexibility to, do stuff with our kids or our family or travel or whatever it is that you wanted to start. And now you're kind of in the weeds. You're too in the weeds. So one of the things I realized when I was hiring is I couldn't hire someone dealing with the same chaos I'm dealing with. So I have 3 little ones, 5 and under, which are kind of busy. And, there's I've got one that's still nursing, one's tiny. So I need, that takes up time. So when I go to hire, I don't want to hire someone who also isn't managing time. And I say also as if I'm not managing time, but I have to be really efficient when I get in to do stuff, and then I have to get out. I get in, I get out. And if I say I'm going to show up and do something, I have to show up and do something. But sometimes if you're hiring a mom who doesn't have stability in her own life, and she is kind of scattered or hasn't been in the workplace for a while, it can be really hard to count on them. And it's not just moms, it can be guys too, if they're doing, 60 bazillion things. The example that the student was in was a situation of just, they were all young moms, all of them trying to do this. And I think that can be really, really hard from a stability standpoint. Not saying that it can't work. And so when I was talking to my contractor this week, she's a mom, but she is really consistent. Like she is super dependable in terms of when she shows up. I don't dictate her hours. She works when she wants, she shows up, and she's just really consistent, and she's going to stay on top of it. And I'm not sure all of the ins and outs on why, like her personality versus like another person's personality. I just think when we're doing interviews with someone, there are things that we can pick up on in that interview to see if there's someone that's going to be as stable as we need them to be for the business. So sometimes it's not a good idea to extend like a charity hand, because the business can't always run on like, oh, I started this because I wanted freedom, so I'm going to go to my best friend who also wants freedom, but is never consistent or follows through on stuff. Like, as much as we want to help our friends, I think we have to be careful with who we bring into our businesses. Just a thought. I don't know, Megan, do you have any? I see you came back.
Yeah, it dropped me for some reason. Yeah, I agree. So I had done, and this is years back, a bookkeeper had reached out to me and had it was an employee that was working for them, and they were kind of struggling with some similar issues. And one thing, like I hopped on a call with the employee, and we just kind of talked about mindset, about like goals.
Oh no. I'm going to continue that. So I remember that story. She actually wound up doing some mindset coaching for that employee, and it actually turned and saved that relationship around. Obviously, I don't know all the details as she comes back. And she's having some weather issues.
Question, is everybody in a cold climate?
She's down in Louisiana, and they're having so they're on the south side of some of the climate issues. But are you back, Megan?
Yeah, I'm back. I don't know for how long. Let me try to stop my video again and see if that.
I'll
Um,
take you while you're
so
here.
I don't know how much what. Yeah, I don't know what all y'all heard, but like, so meeting with the employee, I just kind of talked like I do with any of the other bookkeepers. Like, you got to figure out what your goals are. You have to figure out what that business owner's goals were, and like where do you want this to go, and then also kind of figuring out like mindset, just getting focused and those sort of things. So even like,
Okay. She is gone. I think third time's the charm. So but she brings up an interesting point, because when you're running a business, like, I know for a fact, I come from public accounting, I come from CPA firms, I come from brick and mortar. You show up every day, you do the work, you do whatever it is. So they had bookkeeping departments. I did financial statements. So we did audited financial statements, and then they had a department for bookkeepers as well. So with that, I know that that's not something I want to do. I will never hire someone like to be in brick and mortar at this point in my business. I don't want that. So my contractor, who has been with me, she started working with me about 6 months in. So she's been with me since, so for about 3 years. We took a break somewhere in between. Her life got busy, and she just wasn't, like, she was on a client, something happened, that client left due to just a change, like we finished the project or something, and she left and she came back. But since then, she was doing a 9 to 5, and so she was able to take that 9 to 5 into her work ethic in a sense. But because she has a strong work ethic and shows up, does what she says, like, as she actually transitioned out of her full-time job, And now she's, full-time doing bookkeeping with me and some other contractors. So I told her to never leave. But just an example of like and I've gone through other people as like she stayed on with me. I didn't want to overload her or distract her. So I was like, oh, I'll try this or this. And it wound up just being like, she can do it. Why don't I just, it's one of those like, pay people what they're worth. And if you find an A player, keep the A player. I think of King Solomon in the Bible, and this is just me. So I think of him and how he ran his businesses. It says he hired the best of the best. And I think sometimes we're trying to hire, and I'm not saying like, so hear me genuinely when I say this, because I have a VA from the Philippines. So I love working with other people. Sometimes we need to pay attention to if they can do it. So can they do the work that we're trying to get them? Are they dependable? My VA is so dependable, but there's some things that she can't do. So I need to pay attention to that. Betty, I'm going to read your comment in just a second. And then do they want to be doing it? So like, what do they want to be doing? And that's what Megan was kind of commenting on with goals. I have a question. I'm at a point where I'm totally done working for someone and I'm now in survival mode of looking to get clients and offering my services to bookkeepers that have overflow. I'm at the end stage of raising kids and they are on autopilot now. But I just need to keep income flowing right now. So the question, what is the question there? Is it how to work with other bookkeepers? Or is it how to get clients? So it's networking. So just this, so working with bookkeepers is the same way as you would do getting clients. The more you meet, the more you talk to, the more you know, the more you can help. So sometimes it's raising your hand. I know in our group, we have a contractor thread specifically, and someone will get on there and say, I need help with this. Sometimes it's emergencies. So the more you're available for like emergencies allows you to get in the door and say, hey, I can help you with this, and then become that dependable. But the most I've seen in our group and those that are in our like the student bookkeepers, when they team up with another bookkeeper, like in your situation, it's because they connected over a post, a thread, they networked and connected. One of the concerns some bookkeepers have, Betty, so you'll have to pay attention to this, is if you're growing and getting your own clients, how long do I actually get you for? Are you a 2-month solution for me? Or are you an 18-month, 2-year solution for me? And I think that matters to some bookkeepers in terms of like, are you just going to flake on me in 2 months because you got busy? So working with in that way.
Well, right now, because right now I have no clients, and right now I'm in a position where I need to generate income right now. And when I say my kids are on autopilot, I have 4 young adults and 1 teenager who's 17. So everybody is pretty, like I said, pretty much on autopilot. So my time is my own now. So it's just pretty much wanting to work from home and just not have to deal with somebody on the whim saying that, oh, this is not working or this is working, and I can't live off of somebody's whims when they were like, oh, we don't need you anymore. I'm just like, I need to keep
So
going.
Is working with other bookkeepers overflow really the right for you? Like, is that the right thing for you?
Well, right now it would be just to bring income in, and then I can also build. But for right now, I just need to keep my skills going and keep working.
So it honestly, it sounds like the best thing to do for you would be to get clients, because just the same in reverse, a bookkeeper that's looking to hire doesn't want to hire someone who's it's a temporary situation typically, unless like I did hire a contractor temporarily. My main contractor, this was the point where she was really busy mommy and working at that point in time, and the client had left. So I hired someone temporarily while I went on maternity leave for 14 to 16 weeks. until she transitioned back out. And she transitioned because she wanted to transition out. She was a bookkeeper and she was just getting started. So that's another way to get experience. So that was a temporary situation, but allowed her to get a ton of experience with me teaching her kind of some of the in-betweens too. And she continued working on her own business after that, continuing to grow it. So what that allowed her to do was have income coming in the door while she continued getting clients for about 3 months,
Okay.
3 to 4 months. And I think some of the clients went on a little bit longer than that as she kept them. And then she transitioned fully out, I think, by the time the year started. So it was about 4 or 5 months where she transitioned in and then transitioned out. So that might be an opportunity for sure.
Okay, because also not just I provide bookkeeping services, I also do taxes as well. So that's why I'm trying to like,
Yeah, it's really, really hard to do private label taxes for bookkeepers, and that's often what they want. The communication's really hefty. I'm a tax preparer as well, for sure, and that's a really great service you could provide. But what you're going to have to do, even though you need income in, you're going to have to decide where do you want to be 6 months, a year from now, and set it up that way, like with the end in mind. And that's where the goals workshop tomorrow would come in handy too, is thinking through like, where do I want to be? We do have what we call like a cash flow compass that would allow you to say, here's my services. And then as I want to come in, well, you know, what that looks like over the course of the next year.
okay.
Sue says BNI worked for her. So that now we're talking marketing for sure.
I have a question for Betty. Betty, how long have you been in business?
Since 2000.
Okay, so I have been in business since 2020, and you just have to keep going and just keep getting out there and putting yourself out there, and eventually your name will be recognized. It's taken me 4 years to do this, and I'm a tax preparer and I do bookkeeping too. So yes, it takes quite some time. And do you live in like a big city or anything like
I'm in
that?
South Florida.
Okay. Florida, I see people looking for bookkeeping work all the time. You just have to get in the right groups. And put yourself out there, even though you're unsure about the answer. What you could do at the end is say, if I'm wrong, can somebody please elaborate on this? Because you're still learning too. And so it's about getting out there and actually looking and finding the ideal client. The taxes part will take off faster than the bookkeeping, and that's what you want to focus on right now. In the times of, I'm sorry, I took over your thing. I didn't mean to.
So what I see a lot of times like tax preparers do is if they're looking for recurring revenue, they can derail their business by focusing on tax.
Yep.
So that was advice that was given to me, and it was not in the best interest of growing recovery bookkeeping. That's why, Betty, ultimately you'll have to decide on your goals. What do you want to be doing? Because taxes, unless you're doing tax strategy, things like that, sometimes it's not recurring. Can you set up recurring packages? Yes, it depends. So really, I would get clear on your goals. Obviously, you can join, 100 Facebook groups and get 100 different opinions for sure. So ultimately,
Yeah,
you'll
yeah,
have to
she's
know
right
what
too.
to do.
Thank you.
Okay. So Victoria says, do you think that bookkeepers looking to contract with another bookkeeper would like to work with someone new in the business so they can teach that person their way of doing things? I think it really depends. Victoria, I think that's a really good question. I think it depends on, and I'm sorry, I started answering questions before our Q&A section, so I kind of derailed. You guys are asking good questions. I think it depends on the bookkeeper. When I was hiring, I didn't have time to teach. I needed a bookkeeper who was stronger than a completely new bookkeeper. So
Yeah, and I've done both. But again, kind of like Sherry, it kind of depend on where I was in my business. Did I have time to train them to do it, or what was going on? And if I had like a project that I needed to knock out quickly, it might not have been. So I think, yeah, it just depends on, like, talk to them. You never know.
Okay, I just, what I've noticed from being in different various bookkeeping groups is that, so in the bookkeeper launch group, everyone's pretty consistent because they've all been taught like a certain way. But then if you go into other bookkeeping groups where they're maybe self-taught, you ask one question, you'll get, if you ask 10 people one question, you'll get like 6 or 7 different answers. So that's kind of like, if you know the basic functions, you know how to do it. It seems that a lot of bookkeepers have the different ways to do the same thing. So that's why I'm wondering if like, are they checking on the work and saying, okay, you did it a different way than I would have done it, and that's fine as long as it's done. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
you'll
so
have to
most
ask them. Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry, Megan.
no, it's okay. So I would think most definitely they're going to be checking the work regardless. So just kind of like, for me, I've had contractors, and then like I've had an account manager and all the things. So like the contractor might do the work, but somebody else was reviewing it, and I still did a final review before it went out to the client. So it's not like, so you make sure the client's getting good financials and everything. So yeah, there are maybe multiple ways to get to the end result of whatever that in that particular situation, but it's been checked multiple times, if that's what your question was.
Yeah, thank you.
Did I understand that? Okay.
Megan, do you want to talk about the goals workshop for that you guys are you're leading tomorrow, rather? And
Yeah,
I can
so
definitely.
tomorrow at 10 a.m. Central, we will be doing a goals workshop. There will be a workbook and everything that goes along with it. And we're just going to kind of walk through the entire process of setting goals. And this is what I've done with my business, like from day one, and kind of continue to redo it every year. So it's always fun to kind of get together and kind of do it together with everybody, but like figuring out what your why is, setting your goals, making vision boards, and all those things. And then we will also, like, if you come with questions, if you and kind of have an idea somewhat what your goals are. But if you will kind of work through like figuring out exactly how can you reach that goal? Is that goal reasonable? All those things.
Here's the link, just if you want to join her there. And then I'm still watching the chat. If you guys have questions, we can get into those as well. The last thing we wanted to announce today, just so you guys were updated on any recent information, is we started an affiliate program over a year ago. A couple people showed interest in it this week, so we wanted to make sure you guys had the opportunity to sign up. Megan, I don't know, do you have that affiliate sign up link?
Yeah, I have the form link. I can get it. Grab it.
So if you're looking to get extra cash in the door, that's a good way to do that as well. And she'll post that link. So just want to make sure you guys have that as in case for some reason we get cut off or something. But what other questions might you guys have around hiring, or we can even jump into marketing now at this point.
I actually have a question about reaching out to CPAs. So I've been given a lot of different advice about how to interact with CPAs. I myself have written letters. It's kind of a form letter, sort of introducing myself, because I'm new to the area in which I now live. So I don't know anyone here. I moved from a city to a suburb in Hudson Valley in New York, and like everything is new and everything is fresh. The bookkeeping world is new. Me living here is new. So there were a couple of things that I wanted to do. So I am in the process of sending out these letters. Do I follow up with an email or a phone call, and when? And do I I don't think I want to be walking into these businesses. That was one of the things that was suggested to me, but I think that's kind of awkward. You want to kind of, I assume, give them the opportunity to like look at your information on their own time and then decide what they want to do with it. So if you have any, and also like walking into businesses, local small businesses and just leaving your card, I think that is probably a good idea for me. I don't need to work with somebody that lives locally. I mean, or that works locally. I can work with anyone really, but just as a start, like, what do you think about those methods?
So Megan actually has a story where someone did walk into this. Megan, were they walking into CPA firms? She
No,
walked
they were
in.
just walking.
Go ahead.
Yeah, they were just walking into businesses. So they were going like business to business, just bringing in business cards and just kind of introducing themselves like, hey, I'm a bookkeeper. And it was like a strip where there was a whole bunch of different stores and stuff in there, and one of them was a bookkeeping firm. So she walked in and was like, hey, I just want to leave my card, whatever, and not thinking anything would come of it. And she gets a call back from the owner of the company, and their bookkeeping firm had decided they were going to go a different direction. And they only wanted large clients. So anybody over 1,500, they want to get rid of all their clients that were under 1,500. So she ended up with like 30 clients on her plate from that one card.
That's amazing. Okay.
So
Yep.
also with CPAs, I mean, they're busy. So I would follow up. I would state in the letter, hey, I'm going to follow up by email on this day. And because are you walking the letter in or are you mailing the letter?
No, I'm mailing.
Okay. So man, I found a really good YouTube channel or like video. It's like a really obscure video. I found, I don't know if I have the link still. And I know it was really hard for me to find again, where they like did a really good job with it, but they did say, I'm going to follow up on this day. So you should know kind of how long it's going to take it to get there, and then you can follow up a few days later.
2 days. Okay.
Just for a couple of time, days in case it sits on the receptionist desk or he's out or whatever.
Mhm.
Just let them know that you're going to follow up via email if you have the email, their email.
Yeah.
But absolutely following up. And then another thing, I was talking to, so I was in the CPA world when I was in corporate. I am not a CPA. I did not continue getting my license just because of my goals. So I spent a lot of time in AICPA societies in Phoenix and surrounding areas. And I went and talked to the one here in Albuquerque when I moved. And they are super supportive of like connecting you with lawyers and accountants.
They were.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think sometimes we get in our head like CPAs are like holier than thou, and some of them definitely have that persona and perspective, but not everyone does. And so again, it's a numbers game. It's connecting and making relationships. I think if you want it bad enough, you're going to do 10x the effort that another bookkeeper is, and you're going to get 10x the results.
Okay.
Makes
Thank
sense?
you. What just quickly, like what I see commented about CPAs in some of these various groups is that CPAs often don't know the nitty gritty of bookkeeping. And they don't want to, they either don't want to do it or they don't know it. And so they
But
are.
a CPA isn't a CPA isn't a CPA. So we have CPAs in our group that do bookkeeping. They're bookkeepers.
Right. Okay.
They own their own bookkeeping practice. But some CPAs do business valuations. Some do taxes. Not all CPAs do expat returns. Not all CPAs know taxes. They did it for their exam, but they do financial statements. Some CPAs that do taxes don't know financial statements. Not really, like not if we really had a problem and needed to restate it. They're like, I don't know. They're just going to take care of it from a gap. Like they don't know how to correct it for you. Like they don't know how to tell you to correct it. They just know for tax purposes, it's got to do this.
Gotcha.
So
Okay. Thanks.
yeah, it's so varied on what they do. And there's a lot. So if you're talking to a CPA that does audits, they've got to know GAAP and they've got to know the audit like side. Like there's a lot of compliance with audit. So they don't have the time or mental bandwidth to know every industry. They're going to specialize because they just can't learn it all.
Doesn't everyone have to know GAAP? Isn't that just industry standard across the board?
Well, yes, yes. But a lot of people don't know GAAP.
Really? Okay. That's strange to me, but okay.
Well, I mean, if you didn't go to school for accounting and you've been doing your church's bookkeeping for 10 years, how
You're
would you
talking about
understand GAAP?
oh, you're talking about bookkeepers. I'm sorry. I misunderstood. I thought you were saying like CPAs. I'm like, aren't
Oh,
they?
yeah.
Okay. I understand. So not all bookkeepers are aware that they have to be GAAP compliant even?
Well, if a church is just doing, cash accounting and they're a state nonprofit, they might not,
Okay.
right? But I mean, that's on the entity, that's on the business.
Okay. Thank you.
We see a lot of things. We see a lot of mother-in-laws doing bookkeeping because they've been doing it forever because it's their family business, and they might not know they were just doing what works for them. And I saw it a lot when I was doing financial statement audits, and doing the financials. We have to write up, hey, there's a risk of this bookkeeper that's been on staff for 5 years actually doesn't understand this. That's a risk. So we might, over the course of time, if we're seeing it impact the financials, we might have written a point and said, hey, this is actually a concern, and we're disclosing it in the financial statements on the GAAP financials. So yeah, there's so much to accounting, right? And you know that. What else might we have going on today? Or Megan, anything you want to add to that?
So I guess from the marketing standpoint, just Betty and Victoria were kind of asking
Yeah.
questions on that. So, and y'all may or may not have heard me tell my story and all the things, but I didn't have bookkeeping experience when I started. I started my business like officially in June of 2019. I had replaced my income by November of 2019. So I hit it hard in marketing from that standpoint to make sure that I reached that goal to get there when I wanted to and all the things. So I guess like my biggest advice from that standpoint is show up, like make sure you're everywhere. And when I say everywhere, you don't have to be posting on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, like all these places every single day, but like have some type of presence. That way, if somebody's there looking for you, and then I always hear people like, I don't want to post on my personal page or anything like that, because I don't want people to feel like I'm spamming them, which I get, and I get where you're coming from. That's a whole mindset thing and a whole nother issue to work through. But that's where a lot of my clients came from. Because I'm posting on my personal page, I'm letting everybody I know that I own a bookkeeping business, that I want to help them in their business and all these things. So they're seeing that constantly. So some of the people that became like the best referrals for me were people I haven't talked to in years that I graduated high school with, but they saw on Facebook that I own a bookkeeping business. And then they see somebody else say, hey, I'm looking for a bookkeeper. So then they're tagging me in those posts. I also went to like some in-person networking groups. When I went to those in-person networking groups, I would go find those people on Facebook and send them friend requests or whatever platform you're using. So like if you feel more comfortable on LinkedIn, Instagram, whatever the case is, I went and found those people there. So that way they're constantly seeing me there. They're reminded like, hey, if I see somebody, because they may not need a bookkeeper, but a lot of times the business owners are in these networking groups, so they're hearing other business owners talk about like, hey, I need a bookkeeper and all the things. So you'll be like the first person that comes to their mind. So I would definitely make sure you're showing up and tell. And if I don't know if anybody's listening to Grant Cardone 10X Rule, but that's one thing that he said, and that was one of the first books that I listened to whenever I was starting my business, was like, whatever you think is okay, this is normal. Maybe I just post once a week or once a day or whatever. Like you need to be doing 10 times that if you want to get your goals. You got to be doing more than the next person is doing, because you want to be that person that they're thinking of when they hear bookkeeper.
Yeah.
Can I
Or
ask you
if
about-
you only send out 300 letters to CPAs, that is a drop in the bucket, right? So like
wow,
the volume
okay.
Right.
has to go up, right?
Okay. Just you mentioned the in-person networking. So other than like meetup.com, right? And other than the BNI, that's also not just a financial commitment, but that's a huge time commitment from my understanding.
Yeah.
But the like in-person networking, where were you finding those? You said you found some of those on Facebook. I mean, I've joined a
I
lot of
did. I
small
did. So what I did when I started my business was I got in like our neighborhood groups. And I don't know how they're all names for everybody, but we have them like in our town, and it's like what's going on in Ascension Parish or Baton Rouge, rants and raves and whatever. But got in some of those pages and was like, hey, who knows in-person networking groups? Like who can take me, where can we go, whatever. So made a post like that. And then of course, majority of them, they want you to bring referrals. They want people in there and all that. So they're gonna comment, they're gonna tell you. I did not do BNI. This was just a group of business owners that I happened to find that they all got together. They were all still working full time. They were just trying to meet like once a month. And just trying to figure out like how can we make this work? How can we build our businesses and stuff like that? So there are groups like that. If they're not, go create one. Like make a post and say like, hey, let's get together for dinner. Where's some other business owners? Let's talk business. Just build, like, the biggest thing is you want to try to build those relationships. But posting on Facebook, there's so many people there, like you're opening the door for so many opportunities that if you just go ask one person, they may not know. And yeah, so I worked full time. I had a 4-hour commute every day, and I'm a single mom. So I didn't have time to do in-person networking. So I'm like, the one dinner a month, yeah, I can do that. No big deal, but yeah, BNI every week. No, I didn't have time for that.
And the cool thing is, like, as soon as you take it, like the marketing, like up a notch, and maybe you feel like you have taken up a notch. I know we have someone in the group who started in November. We helped her. She started doing Instagram marketing, and she's already at like 2,000 a month. She just signed 3 clients of 400 this week. So like it can grow really quickly. And so I wanted to show you guys, and like, because now is the time. Like we just had someone post last week 2 new monthly clients in 2 weeks. This was just last week. Right. Or like as you go, this was also last week, this $25,000 cleanup. Or this was a little bit longer ago, 35,000, 34,000, like it's a $3,400,000 cleanup, plus some training in there, 23,000. That was that was about a year ago, not quite a year ago. Megan, I don't remember when that was.
Yeah, I think 6 months, somewhere around there.
Yeah, 6 months or something like that. This one was also fairly recent. Oh no, this might have been a year ago. So she's still moving and growing, but a $5,000 cleanup. And I've seen the gamut. So just know like they are out there, and I think we have to stay sometimes focused. That they're out there. You've been in Bookkeeper Launch. So how quickly it snowballs once you figure out like what works for you. For me, it was Upwork. Like that was just what worked for me. I was home with 2 kids, 2 years, like literally 2 years old, and they were 13 months apart. So newly 2-year-old and under. Jennifer's saying, 2 of my clients found me from my Google page. I love my business. I love showing up in local, and that's part of what helped me grow my business. So Upwork in connection with Google My Business, because the more active I was on Upwork, the more I came up in Google search because they connect together. So absolutely.
Can I ask about Upwork? You mentioned Upwork.
Yeah.
You put yourself out there on Upwork. I've just only looked at the site. It seems like there are a million people that are selling themselves for very little money. How do you get noticed on Upwork even?
I mean, you get what you ask for.
Sorry?
You get what you ask for. So if you're asking for $250 an hour, you're gonna only find people who are willing to pay $250 an hour. If you're asking for $30 an hour, you're only gonna find people, wanting to pay, like, so I've seen both, like, come to me in terms of, hey, I only want to pay $5 an hour. And you're like, I'm out. So I think on Upwork, it's just, it's a numbers game too. Like, but they're there for sure, looking to pay $5 an hour. And then there's some who are like, I had one that came to me. He was a corporation in Texas. They did gas lines, and he had just taken over the accounting. So this was a CFO, actual CFO. He was taking over their QuickBooks desktop file, and he was stuck. So he actually paid me, it was like $150 an hour. He was just like, what is the rate? It was $150 an hour. He paid me for 6 to 10 hours of getting on calls and teaching him what he needed, like fixing QuickBooks on calls like this, an hour. So that was it. So that was pretty early when I started my business, the first summer. So I was making $800 a week just from getting on these calls with him. And back then I loved that, because when my kids were tiny, it was, I want to get on a call and get off. I don't want residual work. I could not stay up late at night because I had 2 nursing babies. So like I was not staying up at night so I could be present during the day to do this. So I wanted to be on and off. That worked fantastic. Now it's the opposite. I want the recurring work so that I don't have to like be on calls, because now they're busier. So I mean, and I found him on Upwork. He found me, and he's like, he saw my profile, he saw the rates, and went with that. So I think it's just how you do it. And I do have a whole training on Upwork as well. Crystal, what's up? Sorry. Oh, you should.
No, I was just clapping. That's good. I didn't even know you could get that on Upwork. I had no idea. That's good.
Yeah,
Thanks.
no, Upwork, because there are professionals that charge $500 an hour on Upwork. It's really what you make it on Upwork. It is not what Fiverr is by any means. When I started my business in 2015, the first time, I tried Fiverr and I was like, okay. And then that didn't work out. So I was like, back to corporate I go. And I went back to corporate. But then I tested Upwork and discovered that they were willing to pay the higher rates. Now there's a lot more spam on it than there used to be. But it's still a great source as just another channel for your marketing for sure. But yeah, you're going to get on calls. You're going to get people who schedule a call with you and they don't show up. So how can you weed that out? Really paying attention to your process for sure on that. Yeah, absolutely. And Kyle Megan, you guys did a really good presentation yesterday on in the community, whatever that call is called, the Wednesday call that we do. Kyle was on it yesterday with you, and you guys talked about value. And I think he gave the analogy of, I quoted one of our friends who has a Ferrari in his garage. Like I quoted him for his rentals. He has a portfolio, like a nice portfolio of rentals. I gave him a true normal quote, and it was like $520 a month for all of his rentals. And like I could do that and it would be fine. I couldn't do it for less. Like I tried to make sure, like, because he's a friend, that I was giving, like, I was like, can I weed out anything? Like, can we chop off anything? Well, the value wasn't there to him, and he said no. He's like, I'll just do it myself. Not a big deal. He didn't really need the financials monthly. He was just trying to save him time at tax time, and I didn't want to just do tax time. Like I didn't want to do it once a year. So it was, you can sign on monthly. This is what it would look like. And yeah, Kyle analogized that too. Like the value wasn't there for him. We're still great friends. They go out to, lunch all the time. Granted, if he had paid it, we'd probably paid it back to him because he's real estate. So we probably would have bought a house from him from using the same money, right? But then, to the same person, you can say, here's a Ferrari for 25,000, title in hand. And they're going to go ask their brother, their sister, their mom, their dad, their aunt, their uncle to get to the 25,000 to get to it, right? So if the value's there, they're going to figure out how to pay for it. So I think with rates, we just have to know the value there. And we help with all of that too. Do prospective clients tend to ask for references? Megan, correct me if I'm wrong, we've both had people ask for references. But I haven't had them very often.
Yeah. I only had one, and it was probably 3 years into my business because a lot of other bookkeepers kept saying, "Oh, I'm getting this all the time." And I was like, I've never had that. Well, then the person that asked me for the reference, like when I'm on the discovery call with them, like I could tell that person was not a good fit for me anyway. So I was just like, look, if you like, I just had to like told him, like, obviously we're not going to be a good fit. I'm a business owner, like I don't have references to like give because I'm not giving my client information out. And he wasn't a good fit. If somebody would ask me that in the beginning of my business, I probably would have been like, yes, like trying to find references. But at that point I had enough confidence to know like, hey, I've built this business and nobody's ever asked me for that.
Yeah. Okay, I don't know if something just happened to my mic. Let me know if you can hear me.
We can hear you.
Cool. Okay. I just saw like a button get hit or something. It's like, but I feel like I've experienced the same as far as references go. It's almost a sign of they're viewing you like an employee, and I don't
Yeah.
want to be treated like an employee. I also have
Exactly.
2 staffing companies, and I was like, hey, I like doing their books, like great. I don't want another staffing company because for some reason they also are like, well, that's what we do. We provide staff for people. And so like they have view me as like, they respect me. One of them does a better job of respecting me as a service provider because I've had to come in and say, like, in essence, reinforce the fact that I'm a service provider to them and not their employee. So I'm not going to answer the calls on Friday because I don't answer calls on Friday. Like, I'll call you back on Monday. Things like that. So, yeah, I direct them to my Google reviews if I've been asked. There has been one time that I've actually, like, I have the books of a CPA. So I do all of a conglomerate of CPAs started a business together. I do the books for that CPA because they didn't want to give it to someone in staff because it would be a distraction to their role. So I'm the outsourced accountant doing their books. I have another set of CPAs who started another business. They're one of my staffing companies. They did ask for a reference. So I had the other CPA firm give them a reference. And because they both started at the same time, I just called and I'd met the person in like a networking group. So I had a little bit of a relationship. And I just called him up and said, hey, I have another CPA, kind of like you guys. Can you send me a reference? Him and his partner sent a reference over and it was fine. I would never do that for like another client, but because they both had CPA license, I was like, y'all two can talk to each other and just kind of made it like that. And they were both fine with that. But I tested the waters first. I physically got on the call and filled that out first. So, but I would have said no, like otherwise. But and I think I had a question for the client, so I was like, I'll just use this as an opportunity to touch base with you. Rare. Anyway, I hope that was a long answer to that question. I'm sorry. The risk of me answering questions, backstories and whys. Okay. I think that's all the questions I'm seeing. Congrats, Jennifer, actually, by the way. I hearted one of your messages, but new clients are good. Who signed up? Did anyone join? Is anyone joining Megan on the call tomorrow for goals? It's one of her popular workshops, so just thought I would ask. Anyone's joining her there. Either way, it's super helpful to get really clear on the goals to see what do you want to achieve. I think sometimes you get into groups. So it sounds like I didn't know Bookkeeper Launch had a lot of offshoot groups until you mentioned it. I am very familiar with them, but didn't know that. And I think sometimes when we get into a lot of groups, we see people, like there was someone over the summer who hired, when you hear of a bookkeeper, I just onboarded 6 new businesses this week. It can feel like, oh, but I'm not doing that. I haven't done that yet. And I think sometimes it can distract us from our goals, or we see ad after ad. We were talking about this a couple weeks ago. you should offer a tax, you should offer advisory, you should do this. And I think it sometimes is a distraction from the business we want and the freedom we want from being at our desk. So I think there's a lot of things to factor in when you're setting your goals for the year, or reevaluating, like, have I gotten off from my goals? Like, this isn't where I wanted to be. I was talking to another bookkeeper last night who was trying to sell me something, but she got rid of her bookkeeping business a few years ago because she got burned out. And so now she's, you know, selling products and in everyone's DMs. But she got burned out. And I think there were seasons where maybe a bookkeeping business is no longer what you wanted. But I also think there's some things to do. Like, there's another bookkeeper on YouTube that I have listened to in conjunction with Jetpack Workflow. You know, she's living the 4-hour work week life. And that's been closer to my reality. If I'm not in between contractors or something, like, then not. So 10 hours a week running a successful bookkeeping business is possible, if that's what you're looking for. But there's a lot of ways it can look. So just don't feel like, as you guys are marketing or growing, don't feel like it has to look a certain way. It can look however you want. Just to throw that out there. But there's also another group, I know of 2 other groups that promote like 10-hour work weeks. I'm just sharing my reality. 10-hour work weeks, and they're encouraging you to do AR, AP, and all of this other stuff. And I don't know how they make that happen. So just an aside. I don't know. I don't do a lot of, I do have some AR, AP, but so. Okay, I think that's the end of questions. Megan, do you have anything to add?
I don't think so.
Any last chance for questions? Okay. I'm gonna jump off. I've got another meeting actually happening right now. But you guys have a very good week. Have a good weekend. I will talk to you guys next week.
Bye. Thank
Bye.
y'all.